everybody, and welcome to DC Fine Art. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. I mean, it's not entirely different. We're going to be working with color pencil. Usually around this time, I'm doing the Paletful Pack Box review and going with that. Well, this month I decided to go ahead and skip that for this month. But to kind of give you a little bit of, I guess Paletful Packs did get me something last month. So the box ended up getting wet, and it wasn't necessarily Paletful Packs, like, I guess, fault, but the carrier, whoever delivered it to my door, stuck it right in a big old puddle of water. So of course that box was like soaked in water, and the paper that they gave me was the Legion Stonehenge paper, and it was like waved out. Some of it was kind of water stained on it. So I went ahead and emailed Paletful Pack Box, and they went ahead and threw in, since they didn't have any of the 9x12s, they gave me like a 5x7 of the same type of paper, and they said that they would toss in just another pad of paper, and they asked me if that was okay, and I went ahead and said yes, that would be great. So whenever I got the box, the Paletful Pack Box came in with my two pieces or pads of paper. I had the 5x7 Stonehenge, so that way I could have like a little sample of it, and I love that paper, so that was really, really nice. And then they tossed in one pad of paper, and I've never tried this paper before. It is by Legion, so maybe you guys already tried it. I have never tried it, so I decided to do color pencil with it. But this is the one they threw in, and they threw in a 9x7, so that was super, super nice of them. I absolutely love Paletful Packs. Absolutely love them. They're amazing. So this paper here is a Lenox Cotton, 9x12, and it says designed to withstand both delicate and bold impressions. This sturdy substrate. I don't know why I say substance. What's wrong with me? Okay, this sturdy substrate was our first 100% cotton paper to be produced by an American mill. With a soft textured finish, it's the ideal surface for graphite, pastel, color pencil, charcoal. This is Lenox Cotton. So super, super nice. I decided to give it a try, and I wanted to try it out for the first time with you guys. So it is it's a very soft paper, but it is thick. So it's a pretty thick paper, but it's just super soft on the front. And so yeah, we're going to be experimenting with this type of paper, seeing what happens with color pencil on it. But instead of just doing like something like a sample and just kind of doing some, color pencil swatches on it, trying it out with different color pencils, I decided to go ahead and create one whole piece with it. Yeah, I went that far. So if it ends up being, I was like thinking, if it ends up being bad, at least I know, maybe it's the paper. But so far, I can tell you guys, since, I've already started drawing it, yeah, it ain't too bad. There is some things, though, that I will mention about the paper in this video. So this will be a two-parter, because color pencil takes a really long time to do. And I am right now, we're going to go ahead and make it a two-parter. It shouldn't be any longer than 2 parts. So you'll get the first part, and then the second we'll go ahead and finish the last. And on the next part, well, I'm going to be coming up with something else to show you guys. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump into the video, so that way we can get started and I can show you, well, how it goes. Alright, so here I'm going to go ahead and start with the leaves, the little mint leaves. And of course I'm going to be using all different types of shades of green. I'm just looking at my reference photo, and I'm just picking what's close. That's pretty much all I'm doing. So I use several different greens. I go from my mid-tone greens. I make sure that my little vines in the center are going to be more of a yellowish kind of green color, and then I go back over it with my white, so that way it kind of stands out a little bit lighter and I can see it. And then I'll come back in with a little bit darker of a green to go around the shadows of the leaves, of the veins of the leaves. so that way I'm not losing those little veins whenever I'm covering up some of the other spots with green. Now, I know I'm going to be working on these leaves, but I also wanted to tell you guys, I know in the next video I'm actually going to do something a little different just to kind of show you some things on like my reference photo, or how I basically what I do whenever I transfer something onto my paper. Now, there is times that I have plenty of time just to go ahead and draw whatever it is that I'm looking at, my reference photo, or if I'm looking at, you know, a still photo, or not, maybe not even a photo, maybe I'm just looking at, you know, a building that I really do like and I just draw it. Now, I do freehand draw things, and so it just all just depends on what I'm doing. Now, in making these videos, some of my pictures I just go ahead and freehand draw. I have done that. You know, I've drawn, you know, the corn, or drawing the strawberries, or, you know, just freehand drawn like the little eggs or a nest, or, you know, there's other things that I've drawn. I used to have plenty of time to be able to just draw and have fun doing it, which I still have fun doing this too. Now, other times when trying to make videos really, really quick, I need to have something drawn up really, really quick. So I just go ahead and I trace and transfer onto the paper I'm using. Now, if I'm freehand drawing something, necessarily I don't really like to freehand draw something and then at least on the paper that I'm going to use to sell, because I have done it a couple of times, but it just depends on what medium I'm using. Now, a lot of the times you'll have a lot of eraser marks when you're freehand drawing, because when you draw something, that line's not going to be where you want it. You're going to erase it. Then that line's going to be there. And once you make your adjustments, you may have a couple lines there that you just can't erase all the way. Sometimes it might be the lightest point of your picture, and whenever you color over it, you're not going to, you're going to have a little bit more difficulty trying to cover that line. So I usually do is what I go ahead and draw whatever it is onto a separate piece of paper, and then I transfer and trace my own drawing onto whatever it is I'm going to use to sell. That way I don't have a bunch of eraser marks. The eraser marks that I get from this picture, I still have times where the lines will kind of show through, because I'm not following exactly to what I even traced. I mean, whatever I transferred and traced onto this paper, I'm not going to be following those lines exactly to a T. There's some of these lines on here which I know I actually drew too much, because I was thinking about it. I was like, I'm going to go ahead and trace as much as I possibly can just to put it on here. Thing is, I really didn't need that much on there. You know, just a couple little things would have been perfect. Maybe the lines, or maybe the shape of where the glass is, so that way I don't go off of the glass, or make it a little bit lopsided or something. But other than that, I really didn't need what I put in this, because I change things so much, or I add things to it. These leaves, for instance, whenever I just went ahead and drew these leaves real quick and just traced them out real quick, all I wanted was the circles, the shape of the leaf. I could have freehand drew that very, very easily, but a little bit lazy this time. Plus I had a video to make, and this one here is super long. As you can see, this video is actually a little bit longer, and then I've still got a part 2 to it. So I definitely wanted to get this one a rolling. Now, in my reference photo, or whenever I traced it on there, I never did put in these little small leaves in the center. I also didn't have any of the details like I do in these leaves right now. I never had the texture of the outside of the leaves that I've drawn. All they were just like little ovals. Pretty much. That's all they were. Maybe one little line down the center. That's it. Just ovals. And I end up looking at my reference photo, and I look what's inside of them. I see the texture of them, and then I can reshape. So I go over those lines. I don't go exactly to what I even traced. I make it my own, and I make it my own texture. I see what it's in the reference photo. I do know want these to look like mint leaves. So I kind of see the reference on what it looks like. Mint leaves have a little bit more jaggedy edges on the side. So that's what I did whenever I was using my color pencils. And going on to like the lemon, as you can see, I got all these little shapes in there, but you can see the rind of the lemon, how I kind of had that line in there. In all honestly, I didn't even need that. I mean, all I needed to do was basically draw like a little wedge shape. That's all. And I could have easily freehand drew that one in. But I wanted to show you too on how much I adjust and have to adjust. And I don't make it, the colors are not exactly to the reference photo. I use my own colors of what I want to put in it. So nothing's identical. I take a lot of the little bubbles out. I put my own little bubbles in here. Some of them I don't even use. So yeah, you make your picture your own. And that's what I've been doing. But this just makes it a little bit more easier. Just for me, just to go ahead and get these videos rolling out. So just a little hindsight on that one. Now here I am, all I'm doing is just adding in colors. I started out a little lighter and then I start getting like darker and I start darkening these colors. Like I said, I use a whole different types of greens, all different ones. And everything's, if you're wanting to look more realistic, just make sure that you have your lights and your darks in there, that your contrast, you have to have contrast in it. Your lights and your darks, make sure they're really dark for the shadows. Make sure, you know, you got your lights in there too. And having those differences and contrast really helps to make something look more 3D and makes it look more like it actually pops. Now the paper, on the other hand, I used a lot of my Polychromos on these. I think there was the Polychromos, I took out, let's see here, the Polychromos, my Derwent Lightfast, my Caran D'Ache Luminance, and I think those are the only pencils I took out besides the Derwent Drawing Chinese White that I absolutely love. I use that in like every single color pencil piece that I do. Absolutely love that pencil. But out of these three, I think the majority of them were the Polychromos for this paper. I noticed that whenever I did do a color chart, like I usually do, if you guys have seen any of my other videos, I kind of show you that I do a little bit of a color chart before I actually work on my piece. And I noticed that I had to, if I lightly went over it with my color pencil, like it was very, very light, like very, very faint, very light, that you almost had to push down just a little bit harder just to get the pigment to set in. Now I tried a little bit of my OMS on this just to kind of not necessarily blend, but I just wanted to knock out some of those rougher kind of edges, you know, where you have that color pencil texture kind of look to it. I wanted to kind of blend it out just a little bit in that area to see if I can knock some of that out and make it a little bit more smoother. It wasn't necessarily to blend in my colors, you know, all together or anything like that like I normally do. I usually do like 4 or 5 layers, you know, blend with OMS, and then I go back over it again. I didn't really necessarily want to do that on this one here so much because the paper, it just like you had to press down harder than what I normally am used to pressing down. Usually I don't press down really hard. Usually I do really light layers, but with this type of paper, for some reason, it just wants, let's just say it tempts you to push harder with your pencils than you normally would not have to do. So with that being said, I really kind of wanted to stay away from my OMS and do a different type of work, like just basically doing a lot more of the like blending with your, basically just adding a lot more pressure with your color pencils in this. I don't know why words are hard for me today, but they are. I think it's because I'm tired. I think that's it. So yeah, here I am adding a little bit of a light shadow to this. Now you may be harder for you guys to see some of that, but it definitely just that light tone gray really does add just enough shadow to it that I was wanting. It's a very light, but yet it's definitely effective on that shadowing. Now here, if you can remember the lemon, how I had it. So here I'm going to go ahead and just start adding in a lot of my tones. The texture of the rind of the lemon, and maybe I should talk a little slower. The rind of a lemon has a little bit more texture to it. So I'm kind of adding in some of these dots, some of these like a greenish yellow. It's more of a on the yellowish side, but it has a little bit of a greenish tone to it. Now I did add that closer to the lemon to kind of give that shadow, that reflection of the leaf onto the lemon. And so I added a little bit of that in there. It's definitely one thing to look at your reference photo and just kind of get that idea of what colors are where your darker yellows are, where your lighter yellows are, where the shading is, what color is that shading? Is it more of a greenish tone? If you have a leaf next to it, maybe my reference photo didn't have a leaf next to it. Maybe it didn't have a greenish tone to it. Maybe you had something more gray there. Maybe it had a gray shadow. So really paying attention to those colors. Look at those colors and see how they switch and how they blend into the other colors. And that's basically what I'm looking at. I am looking at my colors. I don't really pay attention too much of lines or anything like that. I'm just right now, whenever I go into my color pencil works, I'm focusing on my colors. Now you can always change colors however which way you want it, and you can still make it look realistic. It's just about your values on that. You know, if it's a yellow, just think of it as a green and start changing your colors to that, like a lighter green to a little bit darker green to a little bit really light green. Maybe add some white in there for some highlights. So, I mean, you can turn that lemon into a lime pretty much. Now here you see me with that, what looks like nail polish brush. That right there is my touch-up texture by Brush and Pencil, and I absolutely love it. I use it all the time. Like if I especially if I'm working with a paper that maybe I can't get as much layers onto, which this one here, it's like, you know, I can go on top of it a few times, but then, you know, because I'm burnishing, there the word came back to me. Since I'm burnishing and pushing harder on my color pencils than I would normally, I had to go back in with my touch-up texture to be able to add a little bit more tooth to my paper, and that way I can go on top of it. Now, the touch-up texture by Brush and Pencil, it is for color pencils. It is archival, so it's really nice to be able to have something like that that they came up with that was archival and that you can use with your color pencils on top of your color pencils. So that makes it super nice. And what I do is if I'm wanting a little bit more of a white or a little bit more of a lighter color in there and it's just not taking on a little bit, you know, because it's too dark or has too many layers on top of it, it's losing its tooth, I go back in and brush some of that on. I wait until it completely dries, and then I'll go over it with the color that I'm wanting to go over it, and it shows up. So it's really, really handy to have, and I definitely use that throughout this piece, because there is some places where I'm just like, okay, it's not taking anymore. So I add a little bit of that touch-up texture, and yes, it definitely helps me out. So there I am adding a little bit more white for highlights and a little bit of white in there for a little bit of a highlight. Now here I'm taking my electric eraser. Absolutely love it. It is so nice. And that way I'm not tearing up my paper neither. So I'm just kind of erasing some of these pencil marks. I don't really need them. They were just there. Not every single line I'm going to use on that. And I start drawing in some of my own little details and my own little bubbles in there. And so and basically I'm just looking at my colors in my reference photo, and I'm just kind of going off that. Now I did have to make some adjustments because in my reference photo it did not have the mint leaf. In my reference photo it did not have the lemon that was sitting next to the cup. Basically all it was a cup with a lemon being dropped in it. So I wanted to do something more than that, and I wanted to create something that had a little bit more to it. So I was like, you know what, it'd be really fresh and just makes you feel good having lemon and a little bit of a mint leaf just to kind of give it that little touch. So in my head I was like, okay, this is what I want. I know what I'm looking for because I'm picturing it in my head. It would look absolutely amazing. So what do? If I'm needing to have that mint leaf, I will look somewhere for a mint leaf. That way I kind of get an idea of what it looks like. That way I can draw it and have it to where it looks, you know, more realistic, because if I try and just come up with a mint leaf, it may not look like a mint leaf. So definitely those reference photos are very handy to give you the idea of what things look like, because I mean I can think of something in my head, but that doesn't mean that it actually looks the way it's supposed to. So yeah, I definitely had to come up with another thing for my mint leaf, and then I had to get a lemon. And because I'm doing this, and because my reference photo doesn't have a lemon in it, I'm having to picture in my head too of this lemon. What is it going to look like being slightly behind this glass? I mean, it is kind of see-through, but there is a lot of reflection, there's a lot of shine, there's a lot of splash going on, so it's actually going to distort some of that lemon behind it. It's not going to be crystal clear like if you're looking through directly through glass that ain't moving. So I had to also kind of think of that too whenever I was incorporating the lemon going behind the glass, then you can still kind of see it. Here I'm making a little bit more yellow. This is just the reflection of the water underneath of the lemon when it's falling in. So it has a little bit of a reflection, and that's what that yellow there. Now the green, you see me using a little bit of that lichen. I don't know. Let's see here. I think, I'm not sure if I have the pencil. Let me see. I do have this pencil. It's the Faber-Castell, and it's a light phthalo green. Now I wanted to throw that color in there just because I was like, you know what, I want my glass to be clear, but yet I want it to be a little bit more of this, kind of like one of those glasses that have a little bit of a green tone to them, but not so much, just a little bit. So that's why I started incorporating some of that color tone of like a green in it, because I wanted my glass to not be completely clear. I wanted it to have a little bit of a green tone. Plus that with the yellows and everything, and we're coming into spring, definitely thought it would be a nice little touch. Now this little reflection in the center here kind of looks a little funny at first, and you know, after I worked with it a little bit more, and it was toward, I don't know if it was like toward right before I get to this top lemon here, just standing back and I was taking a look at it, and I had to do some adjustments on that also because it wasn't quite right to me. And see, that's the thing, is whenever even though you trace something out, I mean, I don't really follow exactly to a T what my tracing is. That was not even in the picture. So I do a lot of adjustments, a lot of just kind of making things look the way I think it should look like. So yeah, there's definitely going to be some adjustments on that. So yeah, this paper here, I mean, it does very well. I mean, it does hold the color, but I didn't really want to use my OMS on it that much. Like, I used it a little bit on the leaves, but it's just the amount of pressure that I felt like I was having to push a little harder than what I should to whenever I can use my OMS. I just didn't think the paper was actually going to hold up as good as what I was hoping, just because I had to add so much pressure. I basically was almost burnishing, you know, almost midway through it. And when it got to that point where I was burnishing toward the end or toward the midpoint, I really didn't really see no need in picking up my OMS. The only OMS I used was on the mint leaf toward the end, just to kind of soften it out a little bit. I had a little bit of rough area in there, some little bit of toothy type of texture. So I went ahead and blended those out just a little bit, and the OMS didn't seem to do what I would think it would do on some of my other papers. Like, it would literally blend out a lot of the colors really easily. But on this, it just seemed like it knocked it out, you know, some of the graininess, which was really good. I did like that, but it didn't like smush my colors all together, or span or darken and spread out my shadows. So I'm really thinking that this paper is going to be more for if you don't have OMS and you're wanting to do a color pencil piece, and you end up doing a lot of your solid, more opaque colors when you finish off by burnishing it, then this paper here would be definitely the paper to do that with. You have to be very careful, because if you do end up burnishing too much with a sharp pencil, it can tend to want to pick up some of your paper or take some of your layer off. So you want to be very careful with it too. I mean, you don't have to be too careful, but you just want to keep that in mind. You don't want to go too far with it. Otherwise, you could end up tearing your paper. And here I'm kind of working around some of this little bubbles in these areas. And see, I'm going to go ahead and draw in some more bubbles. I don't have these drawn out. Some of them I do, but not all of them. Here's where I'm going to get carried away and start adding a whole bunch of little bubbles just here and there, because I think it should be really bubbly. So that's what's really nice about creating your own piece, is even though you do have a reference photo, if you did trace or anything like that, you know, just keep in mind to kind of make it your own too. That's what makes it really special and makes a piece very special, is when you add your own touches to it and you make it better. You know, adding more colors to it than what the reference photo would not normally have. I mean, it's something that, yeah, you can take a picture of something, but you're drawing it this way. I mean, you can't get a picture like that from a photograph. I think that that's what makes it really exciting for me, at least, is whenever I'm doing something like this, and be able to add my own touch, my own colors, my own little details that I want, and just extend it out just that much more, or take away some things that I didn't really care for in the photo, so I can adjust it. Now here's a this little red or orangey kind of blotch there. It was kind of like a reflection, kind of like a bright, like when light reflects and hits off of it, and it makes this really kind of, and I know it's kind of a photography kind of thing, but it makes like a little bright spot. I really did like that little bright spot, and I wanted to keep it in there, so that's why I went ahead and did that. Now, some of my little bubbles that I have in there, I just don't use just gray or black. This time I seen those little bubbles and I was like, you know what, there's some little bit of browns in it. There's like darker browns, lighter browns, kind of like a tannish color. And so I decided to keep that kind of look, and I wanted to add some of those browns and tans in there. Now, if any of y'all are interested, I know it's kind of like, I don't even know if I'm midway through it, but I just wanted to put it out there that the sale on my website for my original paintings are still up. I am still running that sale. Not for sure when I'm actually going to take that sale away and it'll be back to the original prices, but for now I'm just going to go ahead and keep them that way. So definitely, if you're wanting an original piece or maybe something that you might like that's in there, go check out my website and check out what I have on there for sale. Now this piece here, when I get done with it, I will end up making prints from it, so you can get the prints from Fine Art America, but this original piece that you're looking at right now is already taken. So it has been purchased, and yep, it will be going to its forever loving home once I'm done with it. So yeah, this original will be sold, or actually it is sold, so but I will definitely make prints of it. So if any of you all like this piece and would like to have this piece, then it will be on Fine Art America once I'm done. So here I am kind of going around this glass. Now it was kind of darker around the edge, but it still had a little bit of those brownish tan colors, so I'm kind of keeping that in there. And then here I am with my green, and I'm kind of going on top of it, adding that greenish tone to the glass, and you'll see me do that around the edges of the glass here and there. So I use my grays and I use my greens in there, or at least that colored green, because that's what I want my glass to have, a little bit of that tint to it. And here I am adding some of my yellows, and of course I'm just looking at my reference photo when it comes to lemon. I'm looking at the shadowing, I'm looking at the different colors, how it goes from light to dark, and that's what I'm going by. Except for the little bubbles that I decided to throw in there. And there's another one. I absolutely love the little bubbles. I couldn't help it. I had to put them in there. Yeah, I'm using several different yellows here, so I could not tell you how many I've picked up. I mean, in all reality, I probably have probably at least probably eight different yellows. And I'm just working between these little bubbles, kind of going around them, because I don't want to cover them completely up. Now, always whenever I'm working on something like this, especially if you're working with glass or anything like that, it does look really funny. Whenever you're first working on it, you're like, oh my gosh, I hope this ends up looking like glass. Because at first you're like, oh my gosh, it probably does not look like glass. But you just keep on going with it, just keep on working on it. And as you start getting closer to midpoint, or not even midpoint, because right now I was like thinking, okay, I hope this looks like glass, because but when you get done, it will definitely look like glass. It just looks weird because of all the reflections, all the different colors that's around it. I think I had like some different things, like if you draw anything liquid based, you have a lot of reflection going on, and depending on what's around it, you're going to have things reflecting in it. The yellows and the dark yellows, or the little bit of the brown for a rind on the side, all those things are going to reflect. And I came back through in here and added some of this gray tone in, because it had a really kind of a darker shadow in there. And I wanted to blend that out and just kind of have like this grayish tint to it for more of the shadow. but I definitely need to lighten it up a little bit because it was a little bit dark, but I'll go back through and I will lighten that. Now see, some of these little drips, like these little bubbles or these weird splashes, some of them I looked at and I was like, okay, I want to keep this one, so I'll just keep what I want and don't keep the ones that I don't want. And see how here I am going back and forth with all the different colors. I'm just looking at my reference photo and I'm looking at what colors I see in there. And I just pick out something this close. Doesn't have to be identical. I think I actually added a little bit more browns to this than what the reference photo had. I think it had more of the gray tones, blacks, and there was just a little bit of a brownish shade on one of them, but I absolutely love the brownish look to it, so that's why I decided to go with more of a brown, dark brown for around my bubbles in some of them. Not all of them. Some of them, the small ones, definitely have like more of a darker gray or even a black. So here I am starting on the inside of the lemon. I'm kind of creating a little bit of a texture with a darker yellow. Adding a little bit of white to some of these bubbles so that way I don't get carried away and cover over it and make it more of a yellow bubble. So added a little bit of a yellowish green to that little corner there. And here I am with my touch-up texture. I'm going to go around this part of it because I'm wanting to lighten that up a little bit more. Kind of lighten up over some of that gray because it was a little bit too dark, a little bit more harsh. And here I am adjusting this finally. So I kind of hop back and forth because I know I have time for that other to dry. So while that is drying, I am going to focus on trying to work on something else while it's drying, because otherwise I'm going to go into it and ruin my paper. I don't want to go into that. So there I put a little bit more on so I can adjust it once it dries. So here I am adding some more texture to my lemon. Adding some of the lighter colors toward the rind of the lemon. And the brighter yellows coming away from it. And then I'm adding another layer of my touch-up texture to around the rind of the lemon, where I'm actually going to add some more of my Chinese white to it. And then I put some over, if you see me kind of swipe over the white paper, and that was only because some of the pencil mark was kind of showing through a little bit, and I'm wanting that to be really, really light. And that, of course, like I said, sometimes you can add too much pencil, and this time I really did. I kind of overdid some of my stuff just to kind of show, like, you know, how I change things. But yeah, I kind of added a little bit too much to it that I didn't really need. I didn't really need to do that rind, and so now I have to cover it with touch-up texture so that way it does not show through, because I'm actually wanting to go over the top of that pencil line. I don't want to have that pencil line being exactly where my seam line is. So here I go with my white, going back over this, just kind of lightening it up a little bit. And then I'm going to do it again. So I'm doing multi-layers with this. Now I'm coming back through here, kind of finishing off that rind. But then I'm going to add some of my darker tones to it so that way it's got a little bit of a shadow in there. Giving it some shadow like that definitely adds more of a texture look to it and gives it a little bit more depth. Now I'm going over the top of it. Adding some more of my gray tones for the shadow. Now I'm creating some of this other rind that's in the back, or the back of the lemon. Oh, I'm going to create a little bubble right there. Yes, I used many different colors of yellow. Just kind of looked at where the darker parts of the lemon is and then some of the rind. Now here I kind of went over the top of my lemon, and I'm doing this like pretty much in a lot of these areas just to kind of give that look of a glass, like you're looking through a glass, and kind of put a little bit of reflection in that just by adding some white over the top of it. I hope you all enjoyed this channel, and remember, click the like and subscribe and check out my website for any originals for sale. See y'all next time.